I never thought moving to a new city could feel like stepping into a trap. Not the kind of trap with bars and locks, but a trap woven from silence and shadows. The kind that creeps in slowly until you realize there's no way out. My name is Nolan, and this is the story of Apartment 4D. A place that seemed ordinary at first, but gradually became the most suffocating, disturbing chapter of my life. I moved to Crestwood Heights in early spring. The building was old, a 4-story brick apartment complex with ivy curling up the walls and a faint smell of mildew in the lobby. The rent was affordable, and the location was perfect. A short walk to my new office and a quiet street lined with trees. I had requested 4D because it overlooked the courtyard. The previous tenant had left suddenly, according to the landlord, a quiet man named Mr. Harland who had never caused trouble. Everything seemed ordinary, almost too ordinary. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked boxes, arranged my furniture, and explored the small courtyard below. That evening, while carrying a bag of groceries, I noticed Apartment 4C, the unit beside mine. A woman in her late 40s with short black hair was watering plants on her balcony. She glanced my way, smiled politely, and waved. I waved back. That was the extent of our interaction. I later learned her name was Clara, and she had lived there for years. I felt a small sense of comfort. Old buildings could be lonely, and a friendly neighbor was a good sign. But comfort can be deceptive. The first strange thing happened 3 nights after I moved in. I woke up around 2:43 a.m. to a faint sound, a soft, deliberate creak from the apartment next door. At first, I assumed it was just Clara moving around. Maybe she was getting a late drink of water. But the creak didn't stop. It repeated every few minutes, accompanied by a soft whisper I couldn't make out. I strained to hear, but it wasn't clear. Then, the whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. And that silence was wrong, heavy, expectant. I tried to convince myself it was normal. Old buildings make weird noises. I was just being paranoid. The next night it happened again. Same time, same rhythm. But this time I heard a second sound. Faint tapping, like fingertips drumming lightly against a wall. I pressed my ear to the shared wall. There was nothing I could see, but the tapping continued. Slow, deliberate, and it felt intentional. By the third night, I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening. The whispering had returned, almost a chant this time. Indecipherable syllables repeated over and over, low and rhythmic. My chest tightened, my heart raced. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't stop. During the day, Apartment 4D seemed normal. I never saw anyone enter or leave. The hallway was quiet. My neighbor, if she existed, left no sign of life. I knocked on the door once just to see if anyone answered. No response. I went to the landlord, Mr. Harland, a stoic, older man with a thin mustache and a permanent frown. Has anyone been living in 4D? I asked. He blinked, surprised. You mean 4D? That unit's been empty for months. The previous tenant left suddenly. Why? I explained the noises, the creaks, the whispers. He sighed. Probably just the building settling. Old wood and pipes. Nothing to worry about, Nolan. I nodded, but I didn't feel reassured. Over the next week, the noises intensified. It wasn't just the tapping or the whispering anymore. I began hearing footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth across the floor. Sometimes it would stop right above my bedroom. Sometimes I could swear it was right behind the wall, as if someone was standing there listening to me. Once, I heard the unmistakable sound of furniture scraping, followed by a faint thud, like a heavy object being dropped. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings make old building sounds, but my logic felt hollow. My stomach churned every night and I began dreading sleep. Then came the notes. The first one appeared, slipped under my door. A small folded piece of yellow paper with neat handwriting. You hear me, Nolan. I see you. I froze. My hands trembled as I held it. My heart thudded in my chest. Who would know my name? No one had visited yet. I didn't respond. I didn't call the police. I wasn't sure what I was dealing with. The second note arrived 2 nights later. Stop listening. Stop looking. Stop pretending. That night I slept with my earplugs in, lying stiffly on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for the inevitable creaks. They came. The whispering, the tapping, and then new sounds and breathing. Slow, shallow, deliberate. Right behind the wall. I jumped up and pressed my ear to the wall. It stopped instantly. As days passed, the building itself seemed to turn against me. The hallway lights flickered erratically. Doors in the hall would creak open, even though the wind was calm. I began seeing shadows moving through my peripheral vision. Sometimes they were across the courtyard. Other times, I'd catch a glimpse in the hallway mirror. A figure in the doorway of 4D staring at me, fading before I could focus. One night I woke to a loud bang. My bedroom door slammed shut with enough force to make the walls shake. I bolted upright, heart hammering. I didn't open my eyes. Then came a whisper, soft, almost tender. Don't leave. Don't go. Stay. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I lay there paralyzed until the sun rose. I decided I had to see inside 4D. I needed answers. The landlord had the key. I asked him for access under the pretense of inspecting plumbing issues. He agreed reluctantly. When I stepped inside 4D, the air hit me first. Stale, cold, and metallic. The apartment was empty. Bare walls, no furniture, no signs of life, except a single chair in the corner, facing the wall. It wasn't there before. A small pile of papers was scattered on the floor, typed sheets with my name at the top. Details about my life, where I worked, what I ate, even notes about my sleeping patterns. I felt bile rise in my throat. I ran out of the apartment. I didn't look back. But that night, the noises followed me home. Even my new apartment wasn't safe. Every creak, every whisper, every tap felt like it was inside my head. I called the police. They came, searched 4D thoroughly. Nothing. No fingerprints, no footprints, nothing. The landlord insisted the apartment was empty for months. No one lived there. But I knew something had been inside my walls. I moved out the next week. I sold what I could, packed my life into a car, and drove across the state. I stayed in motels at first, never sleeping more than a few hours, always scanning the ceiling and walls for movement. Even now, months later, when I lie down to sleep, I sometimes hear it. Tap, 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 a whisper. My name and a cold, familiar presence just beyond the walls, reminding me that 4D is still watching. I always thought the sound of walls was just walls. Paper thin, humming with the life above, below, and beside you. But walls are liars. They hold secrets. They carry voices, and in my case, they whispered truths I wasn't ready to hear. My name is Mara, and this is what happened in apartment 5B. I moved to Crescent Oaks Apartments in the fall. The building was mid-century modern, brick and wood with ivy crawling up the sides and small balconies looking out over a quiet street. I'd just graduated college and was starting a new job at a publishing house. I wanted independence, solitude, a quiet space to live and work. Apartment 5B was on the 3rd floor, top corner of the building. Below me was 4B, an older woman named Mrs. Devereaux. She seemed sweet in passing, always smiling, always polite, but she was older, a widow, and mostly kept to herself. The first week was ordinary. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, made my apartment feel like home. The walls were thin, sure, but I didn't mind. Old buildings creak. Pipes groan. Footsteps travel strangely on wooden floors. It was normal, or so I thought. It started the second week. I woke at 2:16 a.m. to whispers. Faint, indistinct, almost rhythmic. I froze listening. It wasn't coming from the hallway. Not from my ceiling. It was inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the plaster. The whispering stopped immediately. My heart raced. I told myself it was the wind settling pipes, some structural quirk. The next night, same time, same whispers. But now they were clearer, almost forming words. I couldn't understand them, but they sounded like someone reciting my name. I tried to record them on my phone. When I played it back the next day, nothing. Silence. By week 3, the noises were relentless. Scratching. Low, thudding sounds. Sometimes it was like someone dragging their fingers along the wall testing the plaster. Other times it was tapping and the sharp, deliberate rhythmic. And always, almost always, the whispers. I told myself it was Mrs. Devereaux. Maybe she was cleaning late. Maybe she was having visitors. But whenever I looked out the peephole, her apartment was dark, quiet. I tried to ignore it. But ignoring doesn't work when the sound comes from inside your own walls. I started noticing other signs. Small things at first. A book I left on the counter was moved to the floor. A mug that had been in the sink appeared on the bedroom dresser. My apartment felt altered when I wasn't looking. I confronted Mrs. Devereaux. I didn't want to accuse her, I just needed to know. Mrs. Devereaux, have you been in my apartment? She blinked, confused. Why would I do that, dear? I stay in my own home. I left it at that, though a knot of unease grew tighter in my chest. Then came the voices. One night I woke at 3:03 a.m., sweating. I could hear it. A woman's voice whispering directly into my mind, not my ears. Mara. Come with me. It's so lonely, so dark. I bolted upright, shaking. There was no one there. My apartment was locked, windows shut. I called a friend, Jenna, and told her everything. She laughed nervously. It's an old building, Mara. Maybe you're stressed. Moving is hard. You'll get used to the sounds. I wanted to believe her, but I didn't. That night, the whispering followed me as I tried to sleep. It escalated quickly. I started seeing shadows moving inside the walls. Figures, silhouettes, something pacing just beyond sight. Sometimes I thought I could catch it, a hand, a face, an eye staring through the plaster. My work began to suffer. I'd stare at the computer screen, typing nonsense, distracted, exhausted from lack of sleep. One night I heard a low knock behind my bedroom wall. Then another. And another. Slowly, one after the other, and then a voice clear as day. Don't sleep. You shouldn't be alone. I froze, staring at the wall. My phone slipped from my hands. The whispering stopped. Silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. I tried to document it. I set up a camera in my bedroom facing the wall. The next morning I checked the footage. There was nothing. No figure, no shadow, no movement. Just me, asleep, tossing and turning. But as I zoomed in, something flickered, a shape, faint, gray, blending with the wall like it had been watching me sleep. And then, it vanished. One evening I decided to confront the building itself. I went to the basement, storage units, laundry, the old utility room. I could hear scratching from above. Low, dragging, rhythmic. I pressed my ear to the ceiling. The whispers came again, almost melodic, taunting me. You can hear me. You can see me. I opened the basement door fully. The air was thick, damp, musty. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness. There on the floor were footprints. Small, human-shaped but impossibly light, as if the person had been walking on air. They led to the far corner. A single cracked mirror leaned against the wall. I approached cautiously. My reflection was normal at first. But then I noticed another figure behind me, pale, eyes sunken, face blurred. I spun around. Empty basement. From that night on, nothing was normal. The whispers grew louder, following me wherever I went in the apartment. Sometimes I'd hear them in broad daylight, faint murmurs in the kitchen or living room. Sometimes I would open the door, and no one there. I started finding notes slipped under my door. We've been waiting. You can't hide. And then, the walls remember. The walls see. You are never alone. One night I woke up to a flood of scratching, frantic, panicked, as if someone or something was clawing its way through the walls. I grabbed my coat keys bag, ready to flee. But before I could leave, the whisper came right into my ear. If you leave, we take more. Don't run. I ran anyway. Out the door, down the stairwell, into the street. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of town. I moved to a new city. I changed my job, my apartment, everything. I don't tell anyone about 5B. I don't speak of it. But sometimes in the quiet, when I'm alone, I hear it. A faint whisper behind the walls. A tapping, slow and deliberate, and a voice, soft, patient, unrelenting. We're still here, waiting, listening. I used to think neighbors were harmless. Friendly smiles in the hallway, casual hellos in the elevator. That was the extent of it. I never imagined that someone could watch you, know you, and wait for the perfect moment to cross the line from ordinary to nightmare. My name is Derek. And this is the story of the neighbor who shouldn't have existed, but did. I moved into Maplewood Apartments in the summer of 2021. The complex was small, 3 stories with 12 units and a shared parking lot. I lived in 2A, a modest 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor. My neighbor Lucas lived in 2B, directly beside me. At first, he seemed like a normal guy. Early 30s, always wearing black jeans and hoodies, a casual smile when we passed in the hallway. We exchanged polite greetings, talked about the weather, the building maintenance, nothing more. I liked my privacy, and he seemed to respect that. That was the illusion. The first strange thing happened one evening around 10 p.m. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard a soft tapping on the wall. At first I ignored it. Old buildings have quirks. But the tapping repeated, rhythmic, deliberate. I pressed my ear to the wall. There was a pause, then a muffled whisper. "Derek, Derek," I jumped back. My pulse raced. Lucas was supposed to be at work. I knew his schedule. I shook it off, telling myself I'd imagined it. The next night, the tapping returned, louder, more frequent. And now it wasn't just my wall. I heard it in the ceiling above me, faint, like footsteps pacing across the floor. I tried talking to Lucas. "Hey, have you, been doing some kind of renovation?" He blinked. "No, man, why?" I shrugged. I heard some tapping." He smiled, casual. "Old building. It happens." I wanted to believe him, but the tapping didn't stop. A week later, I found a note slipped under my door. No signature. Just 2 words, "I see." I froze. My apartment had been locked. No one had keys except me and the landlord. The handwriting was small, neat, precise. My stomach churned. The next day, I saw Lucas in the hallway. I confronted him. "Did you leave this note?" He tilted his head. "What note?" I told him about the words, the timing. He laughed softly. "You're overthinking. People leave notes all the time. Mail mix-ups, wrong apartment, that's all." I wanted to scream, but I said nothing. Then came the objects. At first, small things, my keys misplaced, my wallet moved to a different table, a coffee mug I left on the counter appearing on the floor beside my bed. I began keeping track. Everything returned eventually, sometimes in slightly different places. I set up a small camera in my bedroom. That night, I watched the playback. Nothing. But I noticed something, a shadow moving along the wall that wasn't mine. I froze. The camera didn't lie. A few nights later, I woke to a soft voice. Clear, deliberate, whispering in my ear. "You're alone." "You shouldn't be alone." I bolted upright. My apartment was locked. Windows shut. Nothing there. I left my bedroom, checked the doors, windows, hallway. Empty. No sign of Lucas, no sign of anyone. The next day I spoke to the landlord. "Has anyone been in my apartment?" I asked. He frowned. "No, Derek, why would anyone be in there?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Things have been moving, notes tapping, shadows," he sighed. "It's an old building. Sounds travel. Maybe you're stressed." I didn't feel reassured. Things escalated. The tapping became scraping. Furniture dragged across the floor, heavy thuds above my ceiling, rattling walls. The whispers returned, almost constant now. My name, fragments of sentences, sometimes threats. "I'm always here. I watch, I wait." I started sleeping with the lights on. I tried staying at friends' houses, but the whispers followed me, lingering in my mind. One night I woke to see Lucas in my living room. I froze. He smiled. "Not friendly, predatory. Don't be scared," he said softly. My heart pounded. "What are you doing here?" He shrugged, calm. "Just visiting. You wouldn't mind, would you?" I called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. My apartment was untouched. No forced entry. A few days later, I found a Polaroid on my kitchen counter. It was me sleeping, taken from the corner of my room, a view only possible if someone had been inside while I slept. I packed a bag immediately. I couldn't stay. I couldn't trust my own walls. I moved across the city, changed apartments, changed my number, changed jobs. I tried to feel safe, but the letters kept arriving. Small envelopes, no return address. Inside, a single word or phrase, "watching." Alone. Soon, no fingerprints, no trace. Just the words. The final encounter was months later. I was returning home from work late when I saw a figure in the hallway. Familiar hood, dark jeans. I froze. Lucas smiled. Not a hello smile. a smile that said he knew everything. Knew me, knew my routines, my fears, knew the exact moment to strike. I ran. He didn't follow, not physically, but I felt him, watching, always, in the shadows. I still live alone. I still lock every door, every window. I still check corners and ceilings before sleeping. But I've realized something. It's not about being physically present. It's about control, observation, the knowledge that someone could be in your life without ever being seen. Sometimes in the quiet, I hear a soft tapping at my walls, a whisper in my ear, I'm here. I never left, and I know it's true.